going to be the part of this group. No, you are part of this group. Sorry. What we want you to do is flip over your surveys and fill out the, there's blanks in them. Fill out the first word that, comes to your mind. Not you guys. You guys keep yours down, sorry. We'll tell you guys later when to do it. Yes, you're up. And then while you guys are doing that, I'll just explain a little bit about our suggestion to regression. So, just so you know, these surveys are going to show you how, you may have been inflicted by or, affected by aggression. And it will just, that's why we said, the first word that pops into your head. Okay, so the topic that was, supposed to be for today was social and personality development in the preschool years. And one of the things that this chapter kind of talks about is the social learning approaches, which is basically just learning from others, those around you, such as teachers, parents, and peers. So this is related to our study because it involves a child being influenced by or learning from an adult model. Another thing that we were supposed to learn in this chapter is that personality is developed by behaviors. So two things that are kind of relevant in our study is aggression and emotional self-regulation. And for both of these, personalities kind of developed by watching these sort of behaviors from that. And this kind of, throughout our presentation, you're really going to see and kind of learn how an adult can affect, or anyone really can affect, a child by just their behavior.
So now we're going to give you guys some background information. The people behind this experiment were Bandura and his associates. The research that they did was on personalities with influence, and some of the things that they were looking at were how the environment affected the subconscious. And they also used behavior models like adults and different kinds of media. This was took place in 1961 and was on preschool-aged children. And the reason they did this is because they wanted to see the extent of aggression in society. And according to the See Aggression, Do Aggression article, aggression was one of the biggest social problems facing the country and was also one of the most researched topics in the history of psychology. The question of this experiment is, do children have the tendency to reflect aggression when it is seen in their environment? So the people that were involved with this were usually ages from 3 to 6 years old. Some of the equipment was they used a playroom that was filled with different kind of toys. A couple of the more important toys were going to be the Tinker toys, which were up top, and then the Bobo dolls. The procedure consisted of placing the children in a room for 10 minutes with different toy options. The non-violent one being the Tinker toys, and then the aggressive or violent toy being the Bobo doll. The control groups of this experiment would have been having no model at all and letting the children do whatever they please or whatever comes to mind. And then the experimental group would be the aggressive and non-aggressive models that were placed with the children.
Okay, so this is just a quick video. It's actual footage from Bandura's Bobo doll experiment.
The model pummeled the doll with the mallet, flung it in the air, kicked it repeatedly. Threw it down and beat it. It was once widely believed that seeing others vent aggression would drain the viewer's aggressive drive. As you can see, exposure to aggressive modeling is hardly cathartic. Exposure to aggressive modeling increased attraction to guns even though it was never modeled. Guns had less appeal to children who had no exposure to the aggressive modeling. The children also picked up the novel hostile language.
Okay, so you could really see from the video some of the adult models' behaviors, their aggressive behaviors, and how the child sort of mimicked those. Okay, so now's the time that this half of the room, you guys can follow your instructions. Okay, so for the next part of the procedure, after the adult model exhibits certain behaviors, they would leave the room, and then the child was free to do whatever play for about 10 minutes, as the experimenters observed. After those 10 minutes, the children were moved to a different room, and in that room there was more attractive toys, so this included a fire truck, Tinker Toys, dolls, those kind of things. But the exception was that the experimenters would tell these children that those toys weren't for them and they were for different children, and this was to kind of try and generate those negative emotions to try and get that aggressive behavior out of them. So this happened for about 10 minutes, and after that, the children were taken to another room. And so in this room, there was both aggressive and non-aggressive toys. The aggressive toys included the Bobo doll and the mallet, and non-aggressive toys were things like the fire truck and the Tinker Toys. And the children were told that they had the freedom to play for about 20 minutes as the experimenters sort of observed their behavior. All right, the kind of aggression that was observed in this study was physical, verbal, and non-imitative. Physical aggression included things like kicking and hitting, and then mallet aggression, which is just using the mallet on things like the Bobo doll. And then the second type was verbal, and that was the children saying things like hit him down or sock him. And then the third one was non-imitative, and this was any kind of aggressive behavior that the model didn't sort of exhibit. So that was things like from the video, the child picked up the gun even though the model never used that. So researchers measured the amount of times the child displayed these behaviors to kind of get the results for the study. And just to kind of reiterate the research question, do children have the tendency to reflect aggression when it is seen in their environment? And then the prediction to this question was that non-aggressive models would have a violence inhibiting effect on children.
Okay, so we made a really SADA table of their things, and then we ended up having to take out the bottom portion of the non-imitative aggression, just because, like she said, it was anything the model didn't show. So besides the gun, it could have been like if they were like trying to like kick it, but they like hadn't seen the model actually kick it. It could have been like slight aggression like that. And then they ended up finding that the results were correct, and so the prediction was true. So, but they so what that means is that the aggressive males and the aggressive females ultimately had more aggressive children that looked at them. And then they also found that males overall, like like no matter who their model was, were more aggressive than females. And so you can see that they could reach levels of 20.8 compared to the females who could only reach a 15.5. We also found that there was an odd outlier there where the non-aggressive females models had a higher than the aggressive females, just in mallet aggression though. And then if you compared that to the non-aggressive models overall, if you got rid of that outlier, it'd have a 6.7 overall. And then they also found that children who had models that were that had non-aggressive models were less aggressive than those who had no model at all. So they don't really know why that is, but they just figured that out. And then again, the non-imitative aggression skewed the data.
So this experiment is an important landmark study that shows how influential environmental factors can be for children at a young age. But the study wasn't completely accurate. One criticism is that some of the results turned up inconclusive because the study was too small to compare the results. Another criticism could be that kids are more influenced by people that they already know instead of like strangers. And obviously the study was like the models were strangers. Also, children usually have more than one model in their life that they could have been impacted by. So our additional study was done by Mark Sester and Bruce Bartholow. This experiment studied the effects of the amount of aggression the participants, which were college students, portrayed after playing a violent video game compared to the amount of aggression portrayed after playing a non-violent video game. The primary purpose of this research was to test the temporal stability of video game effects on aggression-related outcomes, and to test whether violent and non-violent games have divergent effects on aggression-related and pro-social related outcomes. So the experimenters used 2 violent video games and 2 non-violent video games. The violent games were first-person shooter games where players run through a futuristic gladiator arena and must kill multiple enemies. Both non-violent games were visual puzzle games in which players must manipulate objects into various patterns within a time limit in order to succeed. The self-rated measurements help the experimenters understand the aggression-related outcomes. So as seen like on this slide, the self-rated measurements measured trait empathy, aggressive impulsiveness, and trait aggression. And then when the experiment was over, they rated their aggression, like the frustration, arousal, and interest, on a scale of 1 to 7. 1 meaning not at all, and 7 meaning like extremely. So before the experiment, the participants were given 2 coin flips. One determined whether they were going to play a violent video game or a non-violent video game, while the other coin flip determined if the participant would have a delay period of 15 minutes or not after they were done playing the video game. They were then escorted to their room where they completed their self-measurements of their aggressive state prior to the experiment. Each participant then played the video game that was assigned to them for a total of 30 minutes. After the 30 minutes were up, the participants reported their frustration, arousal, and interest levels. After this, participants completed the delay task and aggression measurements. So for the violent games, there was more aggression expressed right after the experiment. As for the non-violent games, the aggression increased after the delay period. As seen on the table, the participants rated the violent games significantly more frustrating, less exciting and less interesting than the non-violent games. While comparing the self-rated measurements, the participants that played a violent game had significantly more aggressive effects than those who played a non-violent game.
So one thing to keep in mind for you guys is that technology is everywhere we look. Everyone has a cell phone or a tablet or a laptop or some form of something that they can watch Netflix or anything on. And video games are one of the most popular things around right now. Everyone's getting the new Xbox from their pre-orders and getting those things. So it's everywhere that you look, and it's still rising up. And just so you guys know, like something to see is that someday we're gonna have families of our own and people that we're influencing. Now we have friends that we can influence or little siblings. Some of the things that we see is like the media is just everywhere. We have TVs, video games. And then just know what you're buying. Every game has like a rating, or every movie has a rating. So you can see those things and know what you're getting before you let someone watch it. And then we're always affected indirectly. You might not think that what you're watching has an effect on you, but subconsciously you can be taking those things in and using them in your daily life. So just make sure that you're aware of what you're watching and who you're watching it with and how it might affect you.
Okay, and does anyone need more time on the survey? Okay, so we came up with that to see if you guys have been affected by the violence in your life. So these are all like the positive words we can come up with so you guys can like look at it. And then we came up with some neutral, but then we also came up with some really, really negative ones. And those would be like hag, hell, and torture. And then, so if you guys could just look at that and see if you have more positive or more neutral / negative responses. Okay, and then raise your hand if you actually do have more positive responses. So as you can see, like, that's not like many of us, so you can tell by that you have been influenced in some way by some violence. Yeah. That's the end.